Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Dave Lucas and we're talking with Harold Graham. He's a Chief Master Sergeant and I have to apologize to Mr. Graham because in the past when we've been doing these videos, and we've done several now, I've been calling him Master Sergeant, and he's a Chief Master Sergeant. He explained to me that there's a difference of 2 pay grades, right?
Right.
And I didn't know that, and I apologize for not knowing. We're going to be talking, among other things, about his second book, The H.D. Graham Story, Nurses That Served in Vietnam, a salute to the nurses that served in Vietnam. And he spent time there, he got to know a lot of people, and also, I guess he was in the hospital a couple of times, earning Purple Hearts, and so he's going to be talking about some of the nurses that served him and helped him while he was recovering. So this is his second of 7 books, and so you want to try to get this second one, and especially those of you who young women and those of you who are interested in the service that they provided during the Vietnam War and the conflict there, you would appreciate this book. So it's very, very good. Harold Graham, thank you. Chief Master Sergeant. I'm glad you straightened me out on that, and I do apologize. There you go. I apologize for not calling you Chief Master Sergeant. You said you had brothers that were Master Sergeants, but that you...
Yes, I had 2 brothers in the Air Force that were Master Sergeants and a brother in the Army that was a Master Sergeant. And in fact, out of us 12 boys, there's 7 of us retired from the military.
That's incredible.
3 Air Force, 3 Army, and 1 Navy. I don't guess we're tough enough to be Marines.
Well, thank you for your service, and I'm sure everybody watching and listening to this program today appreciates your service. And it's a tremendous record for the whole family to be so involved in the military. So thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All of our services combined, all the 11 brothers that served in the military, we had more than 175 years of active service.
175 years. That has to be some sort of a record, I would assume.
Well, my mother got a certificate from President Reagan. I think it was in 1984, 1985. She had the most retired sons of any parent in the United States.
Really?
A woman in Texas had 5, but my mom had 7.
That's incredible. That's incredible. These are all kinds of records. If you've not watched the other videos that we started out, this is a series of videos. You want to go back and get them and watch them. We covered his introductory in a video, and then we covered a lot of the activity in his first book, which is a tremendous read. And this one, talk to me a little bit about how you ended up doing this book on Vietnam nurses. How did this come about?
Well, I had a couple of wounds, but unfortunately, none of the nurses that took care of me were female nurses. Just had male nurses then at Quin Yon.
Oh, I see.
And I met the first female nurse, a wonderful lady by the name of Margaret Clark at the train. I'd stopped down there to see one of our patients that I knew, and she was a head nurse then. And matter of fact, I saw her several times at the train when I was in Vietnam. And then I saw her again in 1967, and she was working in California with Barry Sadler. And he was an Army Special Forces guy. He was a prior Air Force guy, and he went to the Army and became Special Forces. And then he wrote the book, The Green Berets.
Oh, Barry Sadler.
And also
that's right.
he wrote a song about the same thing. And he gave me a copy of his book, and he signed it. And oh, I'm very proud of that book.
I would imagine so.
But Major Clark, at the time, she was Lieutenant Colonel later, but at the time she was a major. And she and Barry Sadler were doing some skits on various branches of the service for the recruiting department. And they did very well, and they recruited a lot of people to the Special Forces and the Army Nurse Corps.
Wow, that's incredible.
And she was in the Army Nurse Corps. She was not in the Air Force.
I see. So did you write this book, A Salute to Nurses that Served in Vietnam? Did you write this because of your wounds, or because of the way you met them, or just that you admired the way that they did?
I admired everything they did, and they were a bunch of great ladies. I promised them in 1963 that I'd write the book, and I finally got around to it.
You kept your promise, huh?
And there's stories from 36 wonderful ladies in there, and a gentleman that served in combat nurses in Vietnam and took care of us wounded troops. And I tell you, if it hadn't been for the nurses that served in Vietnam, a lot of us would have never survived.
I see. Here you go.
They were just like a bunch of sisters and brothers to us.
You just all became a family. I see here this is, what is it, Margie's story. She started out by saying she was from Nitro, West Virginia.
Nitro, West Virginia, and she had a friend, or I knew a person that graduated from DuPont, and they were neighbors and didn't know it.
Well, they met up.
Maybe the school's 12, 14 miles apart.
It's a small world, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Nitro, West Virginia got its name because they made the dynamite there.
Yes, they made the nitro.
A lot of people don't know
Nitroglycerin.
that, but they made the nitroglycerin there. It's right outside of St. Albans, West Virginia.
Just across the river.
Yeah, there you go. So talk to us about some of the things you wanted to mention today that kind of led up to this book, or at least that was covered in this book.
Well, the main thing I wanted to tell you was the nurses were not just confined to the field hospitals. Now, initially, during the advisory phase of the war, we had a hospital at Saigon. We had one at Nha Trang and one at Da Nang. That was the 3 field hospitals we had in Vietnam at the time. One in the southern part of the country, one in the northern part, and Quy Nhon, or Nha Trang, was in the central part, the Tu Quoc area. And later on, after the build-up in '65, we expanded the medical corps. Of course, we had a lot more injuries and deaths then, a lot more wounded soldiers, and we ended up with about 20 field hospitals in Vietnam, all over the country. Just like the air bases and the army posts and so forth, they were all over the country at that point. And we needed a big medical corps to handle all the injuries and things and the wounds. And the medical corps did a fantastic job with little recognition. The general staff in Saigon always wanted to, they had a maximum number of troops they could have in Vietnam, including the medical corps. And the medical corps was part of the number they had. So they were always trying to cut troop strings at non-combat functions so they could increase the combat numbers. Well, they started cutting the medical corps, and the soldiers and the airmen and the Navy personnel in Vietnam raised so much cane that the general staff had to back up and leave the medical corps intact because they had done such a wonderful job, and the troops were backing them 100%.
Yes. Well,
They did not back the generals.
Well, and you could imagine that you're out there and you're in conflict, even if you are hurt back at the base. Well, you want to have somebody that's there ready to take care of you.
That's true. And many of the nurses, now not all of them, but many of the nurses, especially in the Central Highlands, they actually went on into the field and took care of the troops that were injured in battle.
Right at that time, right close to the that was
Right,
when they
and they
started
would-
that whole. Yeah.
They would get them loaded on helicopters and send them to the medical facility or field hospital that could really take care of that type of wound,
Right,
because
right.
all of them did not specialize in everything, as you can imagine.
Right.
They
exactly.
didn't have doctors to specialize in every type of wound, so they would send them to the hospitals, and the nurses were trained on that. And they were really the ones that directed the flow of the medical patients.
What was probably the most moving story out of this book that you said that, finally got around to writing it, and you had made the promises to these nurses? What story still moves you when you think about it, whether it involves you or somebody else?
Well, there were so many. I would hate to just point to one because I don't want to slight any of the nurses.
Right.
But I will tell you for a fact, a lot of the nurses worked 16 to 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, with no time off whatsoever.
So they really were overburdened and overworked.
Yes, they were. They were fantastic. They were just like a bunch of sisters to us. And the male nurses were like a bunch of brothers. They didn't act like officers, which they were all officers, but they didn't act like officers working for the lower enlisted grade people, which most of the wounds were enlisted people. But they just worked so well with the enlisted people, and I don't know of a single nurse that didn't give 100% of their effort.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Now, in the book, you're going to find there's some stories is absolutely hilarious. You would think something like this isn't possible.
What do you think is the funniest one in here, or one of the funniest?
Well, let's see. There's so many funny ones. I think probably the funniest I ever heard was the nurse asked this wounded soldier, "Why do you think you have to get back to the States? You're always asking if you're going to be transferred back to the States, and we're still caring for your wounds. We can't even ship you out to the Philippines or Okinawa or Japan yet. Well, why do you think you have to get back so soon? Because I think there's someone else trying to court my girl.
Oh, so that was his reason.
So that was his reason. He didn't care about his wounds. He just cared about
he
his girl.
needed to get back and make sure that girl didn't take off with somebody else. That's those Dear John letters. Those Dear John letters.
Well, the nurse asked him and said, "What, you been getting Dear John letters?" He said that, "No, I haven't been getting any letters."
Oh, that's
But
the indication.
he was not at his home base, and they hadn't forwarded the mail to him. And when he did get his mail, he had about 45 letters.
Oh, so he was probably in pretty good shape so far.
But he was worried about the mail and worried about his girl, and didn't say anything about his parents and brothers and sisters. And he was from a large family, but I guess he did end up marrying that lady.
Well, good, good. That's a happy ending to it.
It was a happy ending, but it's sort of funny at the time.
Right.
He didn't worry about the wounds. He didn't worry about his fellow soldiers and their wounds. Always worried about is his girl. And someone else maybe trying to take her on a date or something.
There you go. Well, we always carry a little bit of home with us wherever we go, don't we?
Yes, we do.
You know, I'm sure that happened.
And believe it or not, most of those soldiers had hometown girlfriends that weren't married, had hometown girlfriends. And usually in the military, you'll find a lot of foreign wives and a lot of wives from different states based on where they're stationed and so forth, because most of them are not stationed near home, or if they are near home, there's nothing around there. Just like southeastern Ohio, there's nothing here but a bunch of nice people. And I guess I shouldn't say a bunch because we are very sparsely populated down here.
Right.
But it is a bunch of nice people here, and that's most of those military personnel at the time. They were country kids. They were not city kids.
Right.
And they could fight too. They could fight with weapons. They could fight with their fists. They could fight with their feet and hands.
They knew how to scrap.
They sure did, and they'd learn it all in their small towns or small communities they grew up in.
H.D. Graham, we're interviewing him here, and we're in Meigs County, Ohio, as we do these interviews. If you're not familiar with that, it's a river county right on the Ohio River, a little bit south, but not extremely south, but it is on the river, and it is a rural area. And H.D. grew up in this region, then went off to the Air Force and did marvelous things that we've covered in the videos and also in his first book. And this is his second book, A Salute to Nurses, from the field in Vietnam. And, you know, a lot of times you don't hear this story about Vietnam. You hear all the atrocities and you hear about all the uncertainties and all the injustices that people want to talk about, but you don't hear about these heroes like the nurses. You don't hear about the heroes like H.D. Graham, who did wonderful things and then came back and taught the fifth grade here in Meigs County because he was a man, a patriot, and also a person who believed in his community and has lived in the community here and doing great things here. And we're coming to you as we record this from the is it Rolling G, right? Rocking G Ranch. I keep wanting to call it Rolling G for some reason. I don't know why, but it's a Rocking G Ranch in Meigs County, Ohio. Not in Texas. Now we're in Meigs County, Ohio.
Established in 1961. I started buying the place when I was 17 years old.
That's what you told me. Bought some of it initially on land contract. Kept
Right.
sending the payments back. That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, what else have you got there for us?
Well, I pretty well covered everything in the cards here.
Good.
But I wanted to tell you, in the nurse's book also, I had to come up with a setting. And a lot of the nurses were referred to as has-been when they get retirement age. Or they had been this and they had been that, so they were referred to as has-beens.
Oh, my.
So I had to come up with a setting to present all their stories and so forth. So I came up with a has-been farm in southwestern Missouri.
The Has-Been Farm in southwestern Missouri.
And supposedly all the nurses, or 16 of the nurses, lived at the Has-Been Farm, and they were visited every now and then by some Special Forces troops that had worked with them or they had served in Vietnam and taken care of. And some of them were staying on the farm helping to milk the cows. It was a big dairy farm, and they were helping to milk the cows and put up the hay and tend the gardens and grow the corn and wheat and everything that the cows would need. And it just worked out real well. And the nurses, when they got the book, were absolutely thrilled to death. How in the world did you come up with that setting? I said, well, you all always told me you're a bunch of has-beens, so I had to come up with a has-been farm someplace.
That's pretty good. I see here a really interesting. He's got photos in here. You really need to get a hold of this book, and in a moment we'll ask HD how you can get this book. But you have a photo of then and now of Roy and Betty Bailey.
Yes, they were a nurse couple. Well, she was a nurse and he was a maintenance man.
Uh-huh. And they were there stationed together, or did they meet there?
Yes, they were stationed together. They came to Vietnam together. And he was stationed, actually, his work area was about 14 miles from hers.
That's amazing, though, that they could stay together like that.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And they were an extremely nice couple, and then he became a supply officer. They moved him out of maintenance into supply because it seems to me like the supply officer was killed.
Mm.
And so he took that position, and everything worked out real well, and they were just an absolute fine company. I've also got the first nurse couple that actually served in Vietnam together, and they're in the book as well, and they both have stories, and they were just absolutely fine people.
I see you have a picture here of the Bailey family, and they just look wonderfully happy and wonderfully gracious. You've got to try to get this book. Read about the Has-Been Farm and the Salute to the Nurses that served in Vietnam. It's by H.D. Graham. We're going to have H.D. tell you now about how you can get a copy of this book. You can't order it over Amazon. It's available on Amazon, but HD is going to give you a secret way to save you some money, and we're all about saving money, so you can actually order that from right here at the ranch, and he'll send it out to you, and he'll sign that for you, and you say, well, that'd be awesome to have the author actually sign the book. He's got this book and 6 others, so we'll be talking more about them. You want to be watching for the videos. We want you to like this video right now if you don't mind, and also subscribe to the channel and like the channel so that we can keep going here with all of these books that HD has written. HD Graham, tell us about how we can get this book, HD, how we can go about getting a copy of it.
Well, there's several different ways you can get it. You can get it from Amazon, or you can get it from the publisher Ex Libris, and both places the books are $29.95.
That's hardback, right?
For the hardback,
Right.
$19.95 for the softback, and plus, the unfortunate thing is they charge you about $19.50 shipping and handling.
Yeah.
And the shipping and handling fees vary, but as the postal rates go up, of course, that's going to go up.
That's going to go up. Yeah.
But you can also get them directly from me, and I will also include a bookmarker, and I will sign your book, personalize it for you, and you can get it from me for $20 for a hardback plus $6 shipping, or $19.99 for a hardback plus $6 shipping, and a softback for $15.99 plus $6 shipping.
And our backdrop here is the actual library of all the books that he's written. So if you're wondering what this is his library, but it is literally his library. It's the books that he's written. And so we want to make sure you have this opportunity. Thank you so much for...
Yes, and I would like to include my address.
Oh, of course.
It's 36008 State Route 143, Pomeroy, Pomeroi, Ohio 45769. And my phone number is 740-742-3033.
Well, that's just wonderful. I want to thank you for watching this video and make sure you get a copy of this book. Again, it's The Salute to the Nurses That Served in Vietnam by H.D. Graham. You can order it right from him, and he'll sign this book for you. And he's got a personal bookmarker that he'll slide in here for you also. This would be a great gift for someone that you have in your family, or a great bedside read for you in the evenings if you want to know more about what happened in Vietnam and the Has-Been Farm. It's really a great creative way. I'm Dr. Dave Lucas. You've been watching the H.D. Graham story. Please tune into all these videos as we continue to chart the books that he has written and also his illustrious life that he has led, and making sure we get this down on the record so that everyone knows that H.D. Graham had a full life and has done great things. And we wanted to come out here to the ranch and make sure we got this all recorded so that you could enjoy and be glad to know this patriot that we've had in our country, Master Chief Sergeant H.D. Graham. Until next time, this is Dr. Dave Lucas coming to you from Meigs County, Ohio, saying thank you for watching. Tune in again so that you can read more and know more about H.D. Graham and the H.D. Graham story. Thank you.